Hi, I'm Lisa.
And I'm Suzy, and this is the Coaching Cast. We are the no-nonsense podcast chatting about the things impacting you at work right now, helping you to survive and thrive in today's workplace.
We discuss different topics each episode, sharing our ideas, hints, and hot tips from our experiences of working in the corporate world, running our own businesses, and also being qualified coaches. We also try to have a few laughs along the way too, because taking yourself too seriously is just boring. We really hope you enjoy listening. In today's episode, we're diving into a topic that touches everyone's lives, whether we realise it or not, and that is money. To help us unravel this complex, often emotional subject, we're welcoming a very special guest, Ed Fraser, who is the Parent Money Coach. And Ed is going to be talking to us about money and having a money mindset and how we ourselves can build our own better, more effective mindsets around our finances. So stay with us and enjoy. Ed is an accredited financial coach and has worked across a variety of industries, from recruitment to teaching and now coaching. In recent years, Ed has been working with people to improve their own financial well-being. He's passionate about supporting working parents who find managing household finances challenging or are planning to have children in the future. Outside of his garden office, you'll find Ed running in circles after his dog or two young children while cycling around the country lanes of Berkshire. Ed, welcome to the Coaching Cast. It's so fab to have you here with us.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you, Suzy. Really nice to be here today.
Excellent. Yeah, we are really looking forward to this topic. It's not a topic we've ever spoken about on the Coaching Cast before.
No.
So in terms of subject matter, we're really excited to dive into this one because it impacts everybody. I can't think of a single person where money, finances don't form part of the everyday. So I think that's why this topic is so it's going to be so interesting and so rich as well. So on that note, why don't we crack on by asking you to tell us a little bit more about the work you do as a financial coach?
Okay. I suppose where we could start would be probably almost verging on maybe 5 years ago, I think it was, when our eldest was we've got two boys, and our eldest was in nursery, and it was costing us an arm and a leg to put him kind of through nursery at that point. But at that point we missed out on almost £2,000 worth of tax-free childcare funding from the government, which we had no idea about. It was literally through a conversation that we had with some fellow parents, all first-time parents, and they said, "Oh, are you getting this kind of 20% off?" And we were like, "Sorry, what?" And and it was a slightly painful calculation when you go,
Yeah.
"Word, can you backdate this? No." Okay, right. This is something. It was a tough lesson to learn, and I think it kind of frustrated us that there was no kind of guidance on this. There's lots of guidance on how to parent, how to look after this thing, like and do all of that bit. But I'm sure there was some literature out there, but there's nothing obvious or no kind of guiding hand kind of to say, look, appreciate you're absolutely knackered, and you've got your priorities are keeping things alive, how to parent, doing all this, trying to work out how, like, Amy's about to go back to work, and we kind of call it, we dropped the ball, but in a way I'm going to say that partly on our part, but that it wasn't. It's really obvious when you talk to lots of other people to go, yeah, no one teaches you this stuff. No one teaches you at school how to manage your money kind of properly, or your workplace hasn't really been stepping up lately. Like, most workplaces don't, to kind of help you with your financial well-being. And especially as parents, really busy, tight on time, low on energy. You go on the internet, Google stuff, and it's overwhelming. You go, where do I start? So this is one of the big reasons why I do what I do and what we do. So because Amy and I run the business, the Parent Money Coach, and it's really about. Well, actually, somebody asked me this yesterday. Sent me a message saying, "Can you summarize what you do?" Because we're doing a little bit of work on that, and I kind of summarized it as, like I mentioned it, the guiding hand I wish we had, not just as young as first time parents, but also I wish I'd had somebody to turn to in my 20s.
Mm,
I was not well versed in being what you're supposed to call be financially literate in
mm,
my 20s. And so what I've really enjoyed doing and now is I've worked with a real range of people on their finances for like gaining clarity on what's going on, control of it, and confidence in what they're doing. But for today, but also for their future. But it really resonated with me to support parents who are
mm,
busy, typically kind of higher earners. And it's interesting, a lot of higher earners ironically don't know what they're doing with their finances. They've got some coming quite a bit coming in the door, but they don't have the control or the clarity on it. And so there was a lot of that resonated with myself, and I go, well, actually, I get it. What's going on? I can talk to them about the childcare kind of frustrations, and so that's kind of where I kind of have now sit comfortably is kind of supporting those parents feeling. I suppose I want them to feel confident with what they're doing with their finances, and that's where
mm.
I step in as that guiding hand.
Yeah, amazing. Amazing. And I mean, I don't have children, but I know, Susie, this topic relates so heavily with you with that topic of childcare costs, because we've spoken about it, privately around just how eye-watering it is. And my sister's had a baby, so that she's the first grandchild in the family, and she's going into nursery. And so that's now a topic within our family about the cost of nursery. And I feel like it's really a prominent topic in the news in the UK at the moment about just how astronomical the costs are, and how it just seems like mind-blowing how we have an economy that really desperately wants everyone to be working, and is really pushing on parents, especially I find at times, to be back at work. And yet there's not a system and an infrastructure that actually supports them to do that, because
Mm.
financially it just really doesn't make a lot of sense a lot of the time. Why would you go to work just to pay your nursery fees? Because that's essentially what tends to happen.
Oh, it's really interesting. I was doing some stats on this for something the other day, and I calculated, if somebody's earning, say, call it £30,000, and they're putting, 5% towards a pension, which is great to do, you're left over with about £2,000 in your pocket at the end of each month. If you were putting your child through full-time care, childcare, nursery, just on the average costs, it varies massively across the country. 65% of that would be swallowed up just for childcare.
Oh, bloody hell. Yeah.
I know. And, I've got some people I work with in London, and they say, oh, we've got one child in full time. It's over £2,000 per month.
Oh my God.
And you sit there and go, wow, okay. And then you go, that's just one child.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
they go, well,
God.
we'd like to have more than one child. Can
Mm,
we figure this out? How do we what can we do in terms of planning ahead for this?
mm,
And so it's a really tough one. And the thing you were mentioning earlier is, the government and everybody kind of wants everyone to get back into work and everything. And they've changed some of the allowances for working parents to be entitled to more to the hours earlier, the funded hours. But the big thing that was missing is still missing from that piece of the puzzle is the space.
mm,
You can, you open up and you had all of these parents who are going, great, at 9 months old, we can now actually afford to put our child into, take advantage of the support, financial support from the government into childcare. And you speak to the nurseries and they say, oh, there's a wait list.
mm.
Did you not put your child down when when you had your 12-week
I
scan?
was, I was just about to say,
Literally when they were conceived, pretty
Yeah,
much.
that's a real thing that
yeah, I know. My
having to
sister
do
found
that.
this out. Yeah, my
It's
sister found
nuts.
this out.
It's crazy that there's that, and the government's trying to do it, but you sit there and go, well, how are you going to get more spaces? You got to fund.
Mm,
Where are these workers going to come from? And there's a big gap there,
mm.
and we as parents are the ones who are suffering from it.
Yeah. And then I think there's that point around consistency of cost of childcare. I don't, this is not a critique on any nursery in
Mm.
particular, but I do think when you have such a high disparity, and especially postcode wise across the country, I think, well, who's actually helping the parents put their child through nursery from that perspective, in terms of trying to do a bit more around the regulation of those costs and keeping it more consistent and fair for everybody. But yeah, I mean, it's just madness. So many women I know who I've worked with who've come back off maternity leave to essentially see out their obligation around their maternity, um, you know, um, policy in the company. They've had the maternity pay, now they've got to come back and work for a certain amount of time, just to go back and back home to look after their children full time, because what they've worked out is on a part-time wage, they can't afford the nursery care, so there's no point coming back.
Yeah.
And I just think that's such, for those women who want to go back to work, I think that's just a real shame, like a real shame. But I want to touch on what you were talking about there, Ed, when you talked about your 20s. I thought that was quite interesting. And I think I think I can correlate with this, maybe even earlier than that, actually. But you
Mm.
mentioned not having that financial literacy and in back in your 20s. Tell us a bit more about your like early years and coming into finance, because knowing what you do now, obviously
Yeah.
big motivation around this parent piece, and your experience of having young children and just not being very well informed about what was available to you to support you financially, is interesting. But tell us about even the years before that.
Okay. Yeah. So, well, I suppose it was in my 20s, went to uni and then got a job. And I was in London, and, I was earning probably what would be considered a decent kind of wage. And I had no idea about like the different aspects of going, right, well, are you saving for this? Do you know what a pension is? Do you know what investing is? All of these different aspects were, things I wasn't familiar with. So it was, I suppose, the unknown unknowns for me.
Mm,
No one had sat me down and said, this is how it all works. And so I was probably living paycheck to paycheck, probably diving into my overdraft quite often. And oh, even you'll laugh at this one. So my first ever credit card with Barclays. So, this, I think I don't know, early 20s. I got sent a letter saying, congratulations, or I don't know, you're now eligible for a Barclay card. And no one has sat me down to explain how
mm.
they work and why they're great in some aspects and why you have to be really careful about how you manage them. So I was like, wow, you're going to give me this amount of money to spend as a spending limit. And I was like, to me, early 20s, I was like, that's great. So I I don't know what I spent it on that first month. I didn't go wild, but I spent some of it. I didn't pay the first installment. I had no idea about it. And I got a letter saying, you've missed your first basically ever payment back to us. Therefore, we're going to reduce your limit now down to, I don't know, it was like £100 or something. And you've got this like blacklist against your name. And I was like, what? I felt really, I don't know, it was really frustrating. One, it was probably taught me a good lesson that and they were doing the responsible thing by restricting me from
Yeah,
actually.
yeah.
But it was that like that's one aspect of it, and then the rest was like I was in a job where I got paid a decent bonus one year, and my wife actually said to me the other week, she goes, "What did you do with that like first bonus?" I was like, "Spent it on a really nice camera and went skiing."
Mm.
She's like, "Did you not set it aside for anything?" No, 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 it was money. It was literally in my bank account. I was like, dare to spend, go and
Yeah.
have a good time. And it hadn't even crossed my mind about buying a house, starting a family, or anything like that. I was in my 20s and just focused on having a good time and
Mm.
not even keeping one eye on the future. And then I suppose even if conversations came up about money, I felt really out of, I suppose, well, uncomfortable. I didn't know what I was talking about, so I kind of shied away from these conversations with family, with friends, and when they talked about this and that. And it was, I suppose it's because I wasn't used to talking about it with anybody.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned to you, Lisa, was the story about me going to Santander, didn't I?
Yeah, which is a brilliant story. And I think a lot of people can relate to this. I'd love you to share it. Please share it
Oh,
now.
I want to hear this. I've not heard this story.
Okay,
It's a good
so
one.
um,
Are we talking Santander as in the place or the bank?
The bank.
Okay, just clarify.
it was
It's a
Santander
good clarification, though.
Santander on Streatham High Street. It's
Oh,
not
okay.
like
Yes,
Streatham High
yes.
Street.
Yeah, yeah, I've got it. I've got it. I can picture
Yeah.
it. Let's
And
go.
to set some context, it was myself and Amy, my now wife, were opening up our first joint bank account together. And she was really kind of on the ball with finances, comfortable talking about them. I was like, yeah, I'm okay, but I don't really want to talk about it. But let's open up a bank account. Went in there, had an appointment with whoever was there, sat down, and then they was like, right, could you tell us about what you're spending your money on? And I was just like, okay. Amy went first. She knew it to the penny. She knew what she was spending her money on. I was there going, I haven't got a clue. I don't know. I go out and I don't know what I spend. I barely look at my bank balance. It's never caused me massive pain that I need to spend loads of time looking at it. And oh my God, I wanted the ground to swallow me up the more questions that I was being asked. It was like, where are you spending? How confident are you? What are you doing with this? Are you familiar with this? I wanted to bolt for that door so fast. And Amy I think it dawned on Amy at that point that actually and I suppose it dawned on me, it was the first time I've really been put under the spotlight by somebody else about how I'm managing my finances. And it was we they did approve their bank account to be opened, which was must have said some things that were right, but yeah, it was probably one of the first times I realized that actually the whole conversation with anybody about what I'm doing with my money, especially as somebody who I'm going to open up an account with, was a really, really tough one to have. And it just highlighted I did not know enough. So yeah, that summarizes a really good point in my 20s when it was the Santander Bank. I haven't been back for
But I think it's really interesting how you describe this discomfort around money. I don't know whether it's a cultural thing, but there is something that's always given me the impression that talking about money is ugly. And especially when it comes to money problems, I think those of us who've had challenges with our finances historically, and I'm sure all of us have had some obstacle to overcome at some stage. I don't think many of us really can say, oh no, it's always been smooth sailing for me. There's an element when there's a problem with finances of shame, I think. I know that's definitely how I feel about it. Like having to admit that I can't afford it, it actually makes me feel physically ill. I hate having to say to people, oh, I can't afford that, or I just don't have that available this month. I've actually had it very recently. It happened to me last month in September. And I just felt so anxious about it. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I was like in terms of how I was feeling about it, but it definitely made me feel like I did when I was a young adult. Now, when I went to university, I'd never had an overdraft before. And I think I spent my student loan that term and my overdraft by the first Christmas in my
Yeah, I
first year.
think I did the same actually on
I did it too.
Yeah.
Hey, see, it happens to the best of us. And I remember having to go home for Christmas, and my dad, thankfully, I came from a household where my dad was very acutely aware of how much of a change and a transition going to university was, not just for me, but in general. And suddenly being in charge of everything for myself, all my finances, all the costs of everything. I'd moved out of home for the first time. And he actually encouraged a conversation around my finances, which I'm so grateful for, because it then set a tone for actually the rest of my adult life, that I'm always felt encouraged to talk to my dad. And my dad sat me down just before I went back to university in the January and said, how's your bank balance looking? You know, how's the finances? And I went, to be honest, Dad, I've fucked up. And I think I used that language as well. And he went, right, what's happened? So I told him, and he was like, how have you managed that? And I was like, I don't know. And actually, it comes back, I think, to the point that you made, Ed, then about not having knowledge around your own finances. The fact was, is that I couldn't answer the question. And I think that scared me more than anything else, was that somehow I'd managed to spend £2,500 in less than 3 months, really, because that first time is not that long. And I couldn't tell you where it went. And I just had no, yeah, I just didn't have it under control, and it totally freaked me out. And so my dad actually got me to sit down and like itemize everything I'd spent almost, and also to start seeing it as groups of items, and see like where's the theme of where you're spending your money, and these are the areas you need to reduce, watch out, restrict. And if you are going to spend that kind of money, you need to set a budget for it. And that's where it started. But I lived out of my overdraft the rest of my university years, because once I'd spent it, I couldn't ever pay it back. And I don't think I actually came out of my overdraft until probably my second year of work. Because it took that long, clearly, to then pay it back while paying for all my expenses. But it definitely set me in motion to have a much better, I think, mindset around money, and being much more closely aware of where my money was going and what I was spending on, which has never left me. And I know you talk a lot about a money mindset, and it sounds like from what you just said in your 20s there, it does come from that experience that you've had as well. And so how would you describe a money mindset? What is it?
Um, so a money mindset comes down to um, it's about kind of what your beliefs and kind of attitudes are and subsequent thoughts are towards money.
Mm,
Kind of the day to day, how you think about money. No, and a lot of it's different for everybody. Everybody has their own unique kind of experiences, and some of them can be really kind of strong, but there can be two sides to this, where there's somebody might have a real positive kind of mindset, and you might kind of view actually that money is a fantastic tool for the life that you want, and you use it in this way. But then there's other people who might have a real negative kind of, or sometimes call it kind of a scarcity kind of mindset, that you view
mm,
as around, I don't know, kind of a bad thing that you
mm,
should feel guilty around, or you should feel feel you shouldn't talk about it. And
yeah.
it's a lot of it stems from how you're wired in the environment that you've grown up in.
Mm,
So, we all sit at some point, sit back and go, that's why I think like that about anything really, and go, yeah, that sounds like my dad, or that sounds like the way
yeah.
my
Yeah.
parents talked about this. And it's a very similar approach to kind of how money was talked about in a household growing up. And because those years are such formative years
Yeah.
of, this is how you should be an adult, or this is even at a younger age, this is how you should be thinking about money.
Mm,
So yeah, and it's not just what you're hearing. I think you could hear positive things going. If you look after the pennies, the pounds will look after themselves. Is a common one. But then if you see that person that's not actually doing that, their actions actually are speaking louder than their words. So it's not just what you hear, it's what you see happening around you as well.
yeah. That is so
Yeah,
interesting.
I've had this because I've got a young child, so he's 5 now, and I've had this about like me and my husband going to work. So, for example, him being a bit like, well, I don't want to go to school today or nursery today or whatever, because I want to stay here with you. And I'm like, yeah, I know, I'd love to stay here with you all day, and we will do that at the weekend. But mummy's going to work today because I need to earn some. I actually use the word pennies. I don't know if that's the right description. I need to earn some pennies so that we can go on nice holidays. and live in this nice house. And I'm quite conscious around, because you're right, and Lisa and I, you know, experiences a lot in our coaching work around limiting beliefs that are formed in childhood about the way we view ourselves and the way we hold ourselves back. It's money comes into this, is that those beliefs that we create in our childhood about the value of money, about where money comes from, about the impact it can have, and our comfortableness with it is formed, as you said, in those early years. So yeah, I'm really mindful about trying to talk to my son in the sense that, we can have nice things, absolutely, and we're very I suppose privileged, and I'm very grateful that we have an abundant life in that sense, but there is work that comes with that, and we have to make those choices along the way. And I remember my dad always saying to me, like, Suzanne, so my formal name, Suzanne, it's all about choices. And that always stays in the back of my mind as well, in terms of my view of about money too, and probably about where I invest, the choices I make with it. But those words that you said about forming those beliefs at a really like early age resonate with me as a parent, in particular, about trying to create some healthy money habits, for my son.
It's so interesting.
The one that sticks in my mind is it's rude to talk about money.
Yes.
And so if I wanted to know about this or that, no, that conversation was not allowed to happen. I think that kind of definitely paved the way for me to sit there and go, no, I don't talk about money with anybody. And if someone wants to talk about money, this is going to be very uncomfortable. And it's taken quite a lot of effort to adjust kind of that mindset. I'm not one completely 100% kind of comfortable even talking about sometimes parts of my own, which is I love talking about other people's, but it is hard to kind of rewire, I suppose, in a way.
God, yeah, especially those things that have been told us, as we've just covered, in the formative years. They are the hardest to undo. As I said, talking about that story I shared about my first year at university, what my dad told me then when we were going through it was, if you are ever stuck, if you're ever in trouble, if you're ever worried about money, you just talk to me. And it was partly based on the fact that one of my cousins had gone to university and got himself into quite a mess financially. And that had involved credit cards. And he never told my uncle or my auntie. And I think that went on actually for a lot of his university years. So by the time he finished, he was in financially quite a state. And there was obviously a lot bigger problem to resolve. And I think my dad had witnessed that, because my cousin is quite a bit older than me, and gone, I just can't believe this has happened. And I feel so sad for, my nephew. And I'm sad that as a family that they didn't feel able to talk about it together to stop this from even happening. So I think my dad had seen that and gone, I don't want that to happen in my family with my daughters. So had always been very clear with me, which was, if you're ever stuck, you just say you're stuck, you ask. And he always said to me, whatever you do, don't get a credit card. And when I was at university, credit cards were being given out like bloody sweets, as were store cards with credit, and obviously 40% APR and nonsense. So I avoided them like the plague. And I think I got my first credit card when I went on holiday to New York for the very first time, which I'd paid for by myself. So this was a massive financial achievement for me at the time, in 2006, I think it was, or seven. So by that point, I would have been 23, 24. That was the first time I had a credit card. And I remember specifically asking HSBC, who I banked with, do not allow it to be bigger than £1,000. I don't want a credit limit more than £1,000, because that's all I need. I just need it to help me when I'm in America. And that's it. I don't want it for anything else. And I know they were trying to give me £6,000, £7,000. And I was like, no, I just want 1,000. So I specifically restricted it so I couldn't get myself into trouble. But this credit card, I was terrified of it. I think every time I used it, I was like, ah! And then trying to pay it off immediately, because I just was so frightened of a credit card. And I think at one stage, I think I had two credit cards because I had an Amex. And actually, even in my 30s, having two credit cards, even though one of them actually had nothing on it, the thought of the fact I had them were terrifying. I just was like, the responsibility I have, I've got two credit cards. It's hilarious. But that does a lot come from, I think, that sort of story of my dad being really like, don't get a credit card.
Yeah. I even conversations I have with people who are not just in their 20s, because we talked about a lot in our earlier years, even people who are in their 30s or 40s are still find these conversations really difficult. I have countless conversations with people who, sit there and say they're really proud that they've never had a credit card or they've never had any form of debt. And then they go, well, actually, it turns out that I need to have some form of credit rating to
Mm.
be able to purchase this house or to actually borrow any money. And I was like, yeah, because you don't have a track record
Yeah, there's no
for
history.
there's no history of you ever borrowing it, so why are they going to lend you a load of money?
Yeah.
And so it sometimes works against people. And
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know, and I think these are the conversations. Sometimes people come along and go, actually, how do I do this? Can I ask you silly questions? And I said, absolutely. It's like this is a place where you can ask all those questions that you probably don't feel comfortable asking your friends or your family
Mm.
about because there is still for quite a lot of people a sense of shame that they go,
Mm.
I'm at this age, I probably should have kind of worked out this already, or I
Yeah.
don't know where my money's going. I'm earning a good amount of money, but I don't know where my money's going. And I should, there's a sense of I should be smarter with
Mm.
my finances, or I don't want to
Yeah,
miss out on anything.
I definitely think there's that piece around. And actually, maybe I can relate to this. As you get older, it's more about understanding. I feel like I should really understand this by now. Like what I don't know what my pension projection is or something like that. I'm like and it just feels like it's something that doesn't particularly interest me, and that's the problem. But then I
Mm,
feel like I should. Like I'm getting to the age now where I'm like I need to understand this, but then
Mm.
it's like, oh, but it doesn't interest me and doesn't make
mm,
me feel energized and excited. And I know that's not an excuse, but I can totally get what you're saying around, you know, wanting to be a bit like, sorry, it's a silly question because I know I should know this by now. But I don't understand this over here, or I just need a bit of this over there. Like, completely can relate to that.
Mm.
yeah. So
And
I
so,
think,
oh,
go
sorry,
on.
Ed.
What
No,
was you
you
saying?
go, you go.
Yeah, I think I don't know where the research was, but I read about something that a lot of people view their future selves as somebody completely different. Hence why it's so much harder to sit there and go, right, let's talk about that time when I'm in my 60s or something. And yeah, pensions are notoriously dressed up to look boring and everything. But I think whenever I have the
I love that.
conversations with people, it's actually getting them to think about the life. Like,
Mm.
what's the life? Actually, do you want to be on a beach? Do you want to move to the countryside? What's going to be different? And actually, the money's going to is the tool to get you to that life, but that's the life. And it's about the kind of the reframing around that to allow people to go, actually, I can see why this is important because
Yeah.
either it's like I'm really worried that I'm not going to be I hear it almost weekly. I don't want to work until I'm 80. Okay, well let's not let's help you reduce that worry and that fear around that. So yes, you're going to have to do a bit of paperwork and a bit of chasing and find this out, and there might be some uncomfortable truths in kind of what the numbers say, but at least you know it earlier on, so you can make
Yeah.
those all important choices, like you were saying earlier, Susie.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I don't know whether sometimes as well, and this comes up a lot being an entrepreneur, that for so many of us, we do live hand to mouth in the day to day. Um, and money can fluctuate so much when you're an entrepreneur, especially so, we don't have that stability around consistent monthly salary anymore because we stepped away from that type of that type of workplace. But I think that hand to mouth, and especially in the last couple of years when it's been so tough across the world with finances, them being able to think about the future and paying for something that just hasn't happened when you're still struggling to pay for the now, I think is really challenging for a lot of people. And I suppose it's also there's an element for me, and I think about this quite a lot, especially now, I'm 40 now, that I'm always like, there's still time. I'm always like, oh, there's still time for that. But actually, a lot of the time, the reality is there isn't really. And like it is sometimes about trying to work out what is available to you at the moment? What can you afford? What can you do? Is there anything you can do differently? Are there small changes you can make now that could release some funds to put aside for the future? But I do think that's very hard when, I don't know, generationally, I feel like we very much live for the moment. And actually, the way you described your 20s made me laugh, Ed, because, living paycheck to paycheck, 100%. Why not? I didn't have any other reason not to. I didn't have anything or any dependence. And I wasn't thinking further forward than like that month.
Mm.
But I think of like some of the older generations and like my parents, especially, I feel like it was quite different for them. And they very much were always planning for the future and their retirement and the inevitable, which I don't necessarily feel is as true for us. But I think talking about parents
Yeah.
again, I'd love to talk about, we've touched upon that, our development in our formative years and how much what we're taught in those formative years influences us well into our adulthood. I don't know if it's ever anything we can shake, but I think that'd be something I'd be interested to know from your perspective, Ed. Like, how do we break the unhelpful, like, parental lessons that are kind of embedded within us around money?
Well, I think the biggest thing, which is going to be a really nice timing for you, by the way, because as you said, when this is released to the world, it's actually going to be Talk Money Week.
Oh, is it?
In 2 weeks' time is Talk Money Week, so you've actually timed that pretty well.
Oh, wow, we have. Suzy, did you do this intentionally? This is Suzy. Suzy, did you orchestrate this episode to come out during Talk Money Week?
Listen, this podcast is highly produced and prepared.
Look at that. Absolutely brilliant.
I'll leave it there. I'll leave it there.
There we are. Say no more. But I think talking about money is such an important thing that a lot of people don't do. A lot of people walk around with money worries that they don't talk openly about. And within a family setup, if I've had some people who I worked with who knew they were openly going, look, a lot of people label themselves, they go, I'm rubbish with money, or I'm financially illiterate. A lady said to me last week. But they don't want that for either themselves or for their children. And so I said, well, actually, kind of how much do you talk about it? And usually it's not a lot. And I was just saying, like, look, talk about bills, for example. Talk about the budgets. Don't shy away from difficult conversations. And I think that people that I have spoken to before who I would probably say that, they're financially confident and talking about this, they always talk about, oh, that's the stuff we were set down from a young age to kind of really show kind of how it all worked, versus we never talked about it. It was a subject that was a difficult one in the house. There was conflict over themselves. Conflict between parents on it. And I think that there's aspects of talking about how you feel, and if it because it can a lot of what you are, if you're stressed around it, can start to cause kind of mental health issues for a lot of people, because money is a massive part of what we do. But if you're, I say, talking to somebody, whether if you can talk to a friend, a family member, somebody neutral. I talk to a lot of people because they like that kind of neutrality of somebody who doesn't know them, and there is going to be no judgment at all. But then there's other people that go, right, well, they go, well, how do I do this myself as well? Because I don't want to just keep turning up and go and just absorbing what or to asking other people. So, well, you go out and learn about this. I didn't. Like in my 20s, I was rubbish on it, but I love podcasts, and because I'm notoriously slow at reading, and so I would sit there and listen to different podcasts and just start to slowly absorb it. Yes, when I had an opportunity to talk to somebody who I felt was probably more knowledgeable on a topic, I would ask them the questions and say, actually, what is this? I don't understand that. In this day and age, there is so much at our fingertips that to kind of absorb about it. But I find, as I said earlier, sometimes Google can be overwhelming. Hence why I prefer a podcast because it's kind of narrowed down. There are some useful blogs out there. There's one which is brilliant called Blue Tree Savings by a chap called Will Rainey. And he's done endless different, really fun kind of short blogs on how to talk to your children about
Oh,
finance,
wow.
from understanding what, even NFTs are through to just pensions, bonds, budgets, understanding what wealth means. And it's always done from a point of view of how you can actually talk to children of different ages. So even if
Mm,
you've got a 5-year-old or a 15-year-old, how you can help them to kind of learn that. And I think that, like, I've got my two boys are very small at the moment, and but that's something that we openly talk in a household about it. At the moment, it's just, it's pocket money. What's going in the little piggy bank at the moment? How much can you get for that? And no, we've taken him to the shop before, and it's amazing how much magazines cost. They're like £6 each
oh,
these
yeah,
days.
they're
Oh
so
my goodness.
expensive.
They are
I
ridiculous.
know. So I go there and he turns up with his coins. And, hopefully you find a shop that takes cash these days, but no one takes cash. And he has been disappointed when he's tried to pay for something. And he cancelled and he went, I don't have enough. And,
Oh,
I was sat there going, do I just bridge the gap?
Yeah. Do you
Or
save
do I
it?
go? Or I let him understand that you cannot just get money. And so he's understood that, oh, I can't afford this, so I will wait until I have got some more.
yeah.
Normally, it's him raiding kind of his grandparents' like purse for coppers or something, but he knows that he can't afford everything always. And I think being able to have those open conversations in a household
Mm,
about not having treating it as actually that's the source of conflict. And if you can't manage it yourself, and the conversation's too hard between couples, definitely seek external help. Because I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and this person who's a divorce lawyer said the two main things are the reasons why people come to him is infidelity and money issues.
really?
Those are the two main issues this person
Money
often.
issues. So
Mm,
that's interesting because I mean the way you describe that very early experience with you and Amy opening the shared bank account in Santander on Streatham High Street,
yeah.
clearly you two had very different approaches to money and had in terms of different mindsets around money. Because Amy sounds like she was very comfortable, confident,
Mm,
had really a full understanding of hers, and you didn't. How have you two worked that through together, and what have you learned from that to then be able to share with other couples? Because as you've just
yeah.
used in that example, money issues are a major source of divorce, and I do think they are often money issues, or I don't even know whether issues is fair, but like talking about money can be a conflict for people if one of you is particularly uncomfortable about it.
Mm. Yeah, that it took time. There was no, magic wand that suddenly we were on the same page.
Mm,
Um, but I think that being able to share the responsibility of the finances is a good step. Being able
mm,
to sit there and go, okay, this is what you're spending your money on, and this is what you're spending your money on. I think that I've seen couples who come along and say, we've got completely separate finances. I
mm,
think if you're completely separate, you don't really know what's going on, what the other person is spending their money on. And that's how they want to do it. But I always say that it creates a natural barrier between what you two would like to do. And I think, completely all for somebody kind of wanting to spend some of their own money on whatever they want. But if you're a couple and you're naturally, I would hope, you've got some shared goals,
mm,
and it's being able to formulate what those are together, like buying your first home, for example, having children, going on a family holiday, buying this or buying that. When it's talking about what those are and understanding kind of not just it's a tangible object and this is what we're going to buy. It's like, well, what does it mean? Like, why is this important to you? What
mm,
what kind of thing do you want? I didn't realize you wanted to buy a house that's going to be that much money. I didn't know that was something you'd been dreaming about since you were a child.
mm,
Okay, but it's about having that open kind of dialogue about what's coming up and having a shared account really does help. You could put everything together, and it's really interesting because I've had some couples, one person might earn a lot more than the other person, and then there is this, well, actually, who gets to spend more if you're sharing your bank accounts?
Mm,
And it's I've seen a problem where people say, well, I'm going to pay for this. I'm covering childcare, I'm covering the bills, and I'm covering this. And you're doing food, you're doing this, and you're doing that. And then when those things change, bills go up, etc., it can become a source of conflict. And
mm,
sometimes by just simply switching up and saying, well, actually, I put in this amount of money, and it goes on, and you put in that amount of money, and it goes on all of those things. It's not like I cover that,
mm,
because it sometimes can lead to a bit of tit for tat, and
mm,
that's not it's not particularly healthy way to manage your finances between the two of you. And you might sit there and go, we'll do it proportionally,
mm.
and then also go, I'd like to keep some aside, like we do it in our household, but both of us set aside some money, going, well, you can spend it on whatever you want. Like I go to, like, in Reading has a bunch of breweries, and I want to go and kind of go to those with my friends, and Amy wants to kind of have a night out doing her thing with the girls, or spending on the clothes or whatever it is. And there's never a question of going, well, that's what you're doing, but she wants to feel like that's what she wants to do it on. And also, usefully, it's good to if you're saving up for somebody's secret birthday present, which it helps to have something set aside as well. But there is no one size that fits all, but I would always urge people to just be open to what the other person's view is, and not think that your own view is the only way you're going to think about this.
Yeah,
And have that shared view of what you would both like, but also respect what each other would like as well.
yeah.
Just on that, saving for a special present, a birthday present. My husband's just turned 40. I just want to share a tip. I'm not endorsed by this product, by the way, but it just really, really helped me. So I started using an app called Plum, so Plum, Plum, about 18 months ago. And this is just my experience of it as kind of a user. So it basically links to my bank account, and over the last 18 months, it's been taking money out of my bank account every week, but the amounts vary depending on my income and my outgoings. So it's got an algorithm to it, so it's analyzing kind of everything. Anyway, I didn't notice this money going out, I'll be honest, because it does it in a way where I felt as a user like it was really sensible in the way that it approached it. I didn't even notice it leaving. And all of a sudden, I like looked at my Plum account, and I had this pot of money there. And I was like, yes, I've got like a pot aside for spending on my husband's 40th, which if I had to find that like in the moment or the months leading up to it would have been so stressful. And at that time, I was like, do you know what? I'm so grateful to my past self for thinking about how to do that,
Yeah.
because it made that experience, and also of creating those plans, buying that birthday present, a lot more like less stressful for me as well, because I had my pot there, I had my Plum pot, and I was like transferring it out and using it. And honestly, I'd never come across anything like that before. And it made the whole experience just so stress-free. But also, I didn't notice the way it had done it. I didn't notice that kind of money like very gradually. And it wasn't massive amounts, just leaving my account over time and going into this pot. And yeah, I found it really good. So I just wanted to share that little top tip.
Plum's fantastic. There are some great apps that do that, that round up your transactions and then kind of move it across to maybe investments or something, or just a savings pot. I think the key to all of that, automation. And whether that's, you saying, I'm going to save £50 a month for this in the future, but it's, instead of going, right, let's get my paychecks come in, spend, let's see how much I've got left over. Oh, I don't have £50 left over. Okay, well, I'll try better next month. Pay yourself first, save first, or
Mm,
you find something automates it. So you go, bills and everything set up always. So you got your absolute musts, but then you pay yourself. Like, there's the £50 there. automatically, standing order, direct debit, whatever you want to do, goes into a separate account that you can't see and go dip into. It's very easy if you use the same savings accounts that your own bank, your current
Mm,
account has to
mm,
dip into it. And you go, oh, it goes out every month, and you just don't notice it, but you know there is something set aside. And when
mm.
you go, right, well, I know that actually if it's £50 a month in a year, I'll have £600. Great. Well, that's covered me for X, Y, or Z. But I think, yeah, the automation and having something separated, and the Plum account did that for you. They got, I've never used it, but I know other people who have, and it's got great reviews.
Oh, wow. I love that. Wow, what a brilliant seamless link, Suze, that you've just offered there to talk about top tips. So, Ed, what would you say are your top tips? Let's go for three. Susie and I love three. Three is the magic number. What would you say are your three top tips for our listeners in terms of helping them to develop a better money mindset for themselves?
Okay. I think number one, if you want to develop a change or kind of money mindset, is to talk about money with someone. It could be a friend, it could be a family member, it could be a financial coach like
Yeah.
myself. But it's the opening up, and that is just making sure that you are now being kind of you'll be able to talk about how you feel about it, what's going on, what's going well, celebrate the wins, and also kind of bring up what if there's anything not quite going right. Um, and I think related to that is when you actually are opening up to somebody, be clear about what you need from them.
Hmm.
Want advice, say that you want advice, because no one wants unsolicited advice from anybody. Say, I just need to vent. I just need to tell somebody this is how I'm feeling about it. Don't need you to sit there and say, this is what you should do. But think about what you want from that person.
Hmm.
Um, Learning about money and learning about kind of how you think about money. There is some fantastic books on the psychology of money, which is a great book by Morgan House. I think it's Housel, which is really interesting. But podcasts are brilliant as well to kind of listen to. Rami Sethi did good Netflix shows, just being on Diary of the CEO as well, which is really interesting to listen to. And then I think the other one is the third one there is you start thinking about money as a tool for the life that you want. Visualize and plan those goals. Don't just let life kind of happen to you. Plan ahead, thinking about how much money is going to be needed for this and how are we going to plan for that. And if you still can't figure that out on your own, seek some external support for it.
That's amazing. Thank you, Ed. There was so much we spoke about. I could have spoken about it for a lot longer. I think it's such an interesting topic. And to be fair, not one that I've thought about personally from the perspective of my mindset around money. Um, as I said, I feel like it's something that's become more prevalent to me in the last couple of months, and I don't know why. I think possibly triggered by um changes in how I'm investing my money, using my money. I'm possibly looking into it a lot more and then being much more conscious about it every day. Um, but yeah, it just felt like timings wise, it was a great topic for me personally to talk about. And I really find it fascinating a lot of the way in which we think about money, where that comes from, and how we can make different choices, as Susie offered from her dad, around how we even choose to think and approach money. That I think there's an element here of like, how is that mindset serving us, isn't it?
Mm.
Sometimes I feel like my mindset around money actually is quite suffocating, and that's not healthy for me. I am in a fortunate position with money. So actually it's about sometimes for me just allowing myself to relax into it and just acknowledge it exists and it's part of my life, but not to be consumed by it. But I think sometimes that sense of overwhelm, I can find quite challenging. But it's been, yeah, such an interesting conversation. I really appreciate you being here with us and being so honest and open about your own story and your stories of finances with Amy, your wife, which, you know, I really appreciate, because I think that's so true for all of us in relationships, and that topic of money. So thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, thank you, Ed. It's been really, really interesting conversation. I've really enjoyed it as well, and taken some personal kind of reflections away to have a think about in terms of my own money mindset.
Yeah,
So it's been
absolutely.
great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ed.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me on. It's been great to be able to sit here and talk about it. And we've been blessed that you might have spotted the dog in the background.
I did.
She's not snored. She's normally a big snorer, but
Oh,
tiny
she's
little
such a
bear.
poppet. For anyone listening, you need to jump over to our YouTube channel to watch the recording of this, because there is the cutest little dog sat behind Ed on the sofa. And to be fair, I didn't realize she was there. And then all of a sudden, she just kind of tucked her head round and around your shoulder. But she is so sweet. My dog would not have sat that still or quietly. So she's a
No,
superstar.
nor mine.
No, Marley wouldn't have for definite. So he's no. I'm surprised he hasn't joined us. He normally likes to like give us a
oh,
yeah, he normally likes to bark just to let us know that he's here. But yeah, so thank you so much. And all the resources that you mentioned there, we will capture those and put them in the show notes for our listeners, so they can go and take a look, as well as details of Plum. So Plum, if you're listening, we wouldn't mind a bit of acknowledgement for the support we've given you and the app during this episode. Much appreciated. But yeah, thank you so much, Ed.
No problem. Thank you both.
We're coming to the end of today's very special episode, where we have been delighted to welcome a special guest, Ed Fraser, who is the parent money coach, to talk to us about money and our finances and how to grow a much better money mindset. So, Ed's top tips from today's episode are as follows. Number one, talk about money. I think that was probably the biggest thing we spoke about. That's the theme. Talk about it. Really open up. Be specific about who you choose to speak about your money with. So someone you trust, but that can be either a family member, a friend, or someone completely unbiased, unrelated to you, an expert like Ed. And talk about your feelings about money, your successes, your challenges, your worries. But yes, talk about it. I think that's the biggest thing that Ed spoke about. Number two, when you're talking about money, be really clear about who you've chosen to speak to and what you want from them. Do you want their advice? Do you want just to have a rant? Do you want their opinion? But whatever it is, just be clear about it, and be clear about it with them up front, so that you actually have a really productive conversation. Number three, embrace learning about money. So if you yourself acknowledge that you have gaps in your knowledge around money and finances and how things work, let's be honest, they're bloody complicated, in my opinion. And there are actually so many options out there, so many ways we can manage our money. Then go learn. I think Ed shared some great resources. We will share those in the show notes, you know, from podcasts to books. But yes, feed your thirst for knowledge. Don't be afraid to go and ask some questions. And lastly, I think Susan and I both loved this one. Really think about money as a tool for the life you want. So really think about what money you want to have, what you want it for. I think we spoke about that a lot in respect of our relationships with others, and when it comes to money, you know, really talking about our dreams, our aspirations, creating shared goals that can really help to support us for the future, but also help us to maintain much healthier relationships with our other halves in the here and now when it comes to money. Don't worry if you can't remember all of these top tips. These will be on Instagram, along with our usual updates around this particular episode. If you're looking for our Instagram page, it is at the Coaching Cast, and we will be sharing the top tips over the course of this week and the month.
We will also have a brand new episode for you next month in early December, and wait for it, it's our festive special.
Oh my
Yay!
God, we're that time of year.
I know, we're there already. I can't believe it. But in that episode, we will be sharing our tips on how to get more progression opportunities, as well as having just a jolly old festive good time. So look out for it in early December. CBBs, we know you're busy, but it would mean the world to us if you could take a minute to rate, review, and subscribe to the Coaching Cast wherever you listen to your podcasts. It takes seconds, it's free to do. And also, if you could tell one person in your life who you think this podcast might help, pass it on. Send them a link or a specific episode, might even be this one, as it helps the podcast grow. And we are super grateful. So please spread the word.
Sorry, I've just noticed I've forgotten my my song, but I've got it. Cool. Before we sign off, we like to end each episode of the Coaching Cast with our personal song recommendation, giving you energy and motivation as you launch into the next part of your working day. It's my choice this week, and I have chosen another amazing tune from Self-Esteem. So those of you who listen to the podcast regularly, you will know I'm a big Self-Esteem fan. She has got out a new single. It's a banger. It's called Love Second, Music First. Preach. And I love it. So go listen to that. That'll go and like energize you, ready for the rest of this day. Thank you so much for listening to us, CBBS. It's been great to be here with you all. We look forward to seeing you next month for our festive special. And remember, you've got this.